Be right back.
Allegedly. If I did. So I did. I didn't touch anything except for my somebody was standing in front of the stove. It's the stove's fault. It's very bad design. No, I think it's whoever put stuff on top of the stove. It's their fault. No, that stove should be just like
All right. Good morning, everyone. Sorry for the late start. I got so busy talking out there, I forgot what time it was. Um, all right. So I think today might be our last day in Philippians. Might be. We'll see how it goes. And this is a pretty popular. We're going to be going over some very popular verses today in Philippians 4. So it might increase the amount of discussion, and we might end next week. Just to let you all know, next week or the week after, our next study that we're going to be doing is going to be on, for lack of a better phrase, the spiritual disciplines. Maybe I'll call it something else, because I know when people hear the word discipline, they can sometimes cringe. Like, that doesn't sound like a great class. And so spiritual habits, practice, uh, base, basic practices that Christians should be in the habit of. That's really what it's going to be about. Some of which are very well known and very well practiced, probably by us. Others are less practiced or less common amongst us. We're less intentional about. And so I look forward to that. It's hopefully going to be a very practical class, not while I think our class in Philippians has been pretty practical and talking about how it changes us. This is going to be very oriented toward how to change different actions you can take throughout the week, things that are helpful to us. But without further ado, let's get into Philippians 4. Philippians 4. So we are left off at about verse 4 or 5 last time. That's right. I think there's a song for verse 13 too, I think. I don't know it very well. Is there one for Philippians 4:13? I know it's another famous verse, but we will see.
I think there's a song that has that.
Okay. So who would like to read Philippians 4? We'll start verse 4 and go through verse 7. That's enough for us to talk about right there.
Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say rejoice. Let your gentleness be known to all men. The Lord is at hand. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus.
All right. Thank you. So we talked about rejoicing some last week, and rejoicing always, that very difficult command to keep. There's very few words, but a lot of difficulties that get in our way of that. And to this group of people who are worried about Paul, maybe even worried about persecution among their own group, rejoicing always is also equally a challenge for them. So to recap some of what we discussed last week, if we can remember, what is it that we can do to help us rejoice always, and maybe mitigate those things that keep us from rejoicing? What are those things that keep us from rejoicing always? Why don't we rejoice? What? The news. I think so. In application suggestions, see that one, that indented bullet point right there? I said limit the amount of news you take in. So I'm ahead of you there, Mark. It's the news can I mean, there's a lot of sad things in the news, and I mean, I'm not saying we shouldn't put ourselves under rocks, but if we let the news be what writes the narrative that's constantly in our minds about the world and the things going on in it, that is, you're not going to rejoice. But if we let the Bible and the narrative of the gospel be what really writes the narrative that we live our lives by, that's going to give us every reason to rejoice, even in the face of all those horrible things that we see on the news, right? Um, okay, what are some other things, difficulties that we have to overcome for why we don't rejoice? What prevents us from rejoicing?
Everyday challenges in life, things that happen to us unexpectedly.
Yeah, yeah, things that happen to us. Sometimes accidents occur. Might not even be anyone's fault, and it can be a setback for the plans that you had, and that's really hard in those times to rejoice, right? Um, yeah, I wasn't going to bring that up. Um,
These are actually,
uh,
It's interesting though that you felt the need to repeat.
yeah,
Again, and I said, yeah, again, I said.
yeah,
So we need to be reminded.
yeah. That's right. It's really emphatic. He's implying you need to rejoice, and rejoice in the Lord and what He has done.
I think a big one is our self-centeredness sometimes. Um, Thinking more about our woes than the blessings that are in our lives and stuff. Big and tough to overcome sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. To go to your point, if let's say we have this frame where we have this plan for our lives and our even just our day and what it should be like and what our lives ought to be like, and then whenever that gets interrupted, whenever the world doesn't go according to your plans or other people don't go according to your plans, yeah, it's not going to work. But part of realizing that you aren't in control as much as you think you are, and that the world doesn't bend to our wishes. Uh, we that can be freeing thought to realize I shouldn't expect all these things to go my way, but if they do, that's great. If they don't, I still have other reasons to rejoice, and those things that truly matter are the reasons that we really should rejoice in the Lord. Uh, okay, but if okay, so is there any? I don't know. This is one of that's really hard to dig deep, especially on days that are very difficult and hard. What are ways that we can be? This takes resilience. It takes a lot of resilience to rejoice in the face of adversity and on hard days.
Did anybody say sickness?
No, but
That's what we're talking about. It said that it's really hard to rejoice.
yes,
Or when you've been diagnosed.
yeah. Even worse, thinking about it this week. Uh, when your kid is something. Not Sophia's fine. She had like a minor procedure taking out a skin tag off of her eyelid that was bothering her and causing some issues. And everything went great. But I will say, Rachel and I were like really hoping it goes well. We didn't think that her safety was in problem, but we just really didn't want. It's just you feel helpless, yeah. And whenever it's your kid, especially versus yourself. If it was myself, I wouldn't have cared as much. But yeah, I think especially seeing your kid sick in any way, that can be tough too. There's a lot of reasons why it can be hard to rejoice always, and there are times we can be sorrowful and always rejoicing. There isn't. There can be sorrow mingled with joy too. I'm not saying we have to always be smiling at all the time. Uh, where we are humans and we do experience emotions in real time. But there are reasons to rejoice even in those horrible circumstances. I'm trying to. I know people. If you're going through really hard stuff, you could be in a place where you trust God still, but you're still sad and sorrowful. I think. I don't know. But that's a lot to get into right now. But I would like to, if you were going through something right now, I'd love to talk about that sort of thing. It's very hard to continue to rejoice in those times, but again, it does take some tenacity. It does take effort on our part to not let the world get us down and our situations get us down to the point where we are despairing. I think the opposite of rejoicing is despairing and being in a constant state of anxiety, which gets into our next couple things. Well, actually, I don't want to skip over verse 5. It says, "Let your gentleness be known to everyone." Does anyone in verse 5 have a different translation of that phrase? Moderation. Okay. Reasonableness. Now, okay, anything else? Anyone else? Okay, those are pretty different things. Reasonableness and gentleness are kind of different virtues. And that's because there's no exact English equivalent to this term that Paul is trying to convey here. Epiekes is the Greek word for it, but what it is, it's a not holding firm to what is your rights, for instance. So let me give you an example. Not holding your rights before other people, hanging them over their heads, insisting upon them. So for instance, let's say you are in court and because someone has done something against you to wrong you, and they legitimately have done something wrong. If you have this virtue in you, you are not going to prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law possible and insist on that. It's going to be one where you are hopefully more lenient, more considering not your own rights but those of others. That's a legal context for how it can be used, but it's really one of the virtues that Christ displayed in chapter 2, where it says, "Though he existed in the form of God, he did not regard equality with God as something to be grasped." He did not. It's people not insisting on these things that are their own rights. Like, I deserve this. This is my right. Even if it's written in the Constitution, it's my human right to have this. It's not always insisting on those things. It's being gentle. Part of it is being gentle in the terms of, you could see that in that example of being gentle in that court of law, that example I gave. But and not insisting, hey, you agreed to do this, and so we're going to do it all the time. And while we can make demands, and we, according to our rights, it's making sure that you're trying to be reasonable, to use that other translation with others. Now, let's attempt to give some other examples of what this might mean. If I'm trying to get this across to you, what this is. What are some other ways that we can have this virtue of gentleness or reasonableness, or what was it? Moderation. Whenever we are dealing with others, especially when it comes to our rights. What is our right? What are some rights that you often want to insist upon with others? It's another way that you can phrase it.
I have a thing out for our house, these little pavers, probably not quite as big as this thing, but it's on my property on the curb. It's for me to put my yard waste on. You know where I'm going with this? No, I'm getting like. She doesn't know where I'm going with this. And my neighbor, he thinks it's his. And I won't lie. I mean, sometimes I see him or his yard guy putting stuff on those are I mean, and I get irritated when I see it. Then I go, what is it really matter? You know, and see, so I could go over there and say, you know, I don't know if you understand this. Those are my favorites. I can do that. Or
you could put another set next to yours for him.
that would be a hint. I could just dump some papers out of his yard.
Um,
But you know, the point is I just kind of left it with myself like, it's not that big a deal. Not a big deal to bring it up or make, you know, it's my right, it's my property. Those are mine.
yeah. Yeah, that's an example where you could have dealt according to your rights, but you chose to use gentleness or whatever word you want to use to describe that virtue. Yeah. I mean, yeah, there you can do this out of avoidance, and that might not be as big a display of virtue if it's just avoidance. But
It's interesting
yeah,
that this follows the statement about rejoice, because he's identifying some things that will help, help you be able to rejoice.
And I should rejoice that I've got these things for both of us.
This kind of stuff that that bothers you and that robs you of joy. I mean, it's just your mind's so tangled up with, well, I want, this is my right. I'm being,
Someone's disrespecting me.
someone's just take you away from just thinking about other things.
yeah.
I had a really, really good friend in Kodiak. He applied to OCS, which is Officers Candidate School. He applied 3 times, and he got probably the highest marks at the air station for his rating. He got an excellent endorsement from the command and multiple senators, and everything looked really great. But other people who were less qualified than he was got selected over him. And what that ended up doing to him, instead of having this kind of attitude, he had the opposite attitude, in which he ended up basically having a really bad taste in his mouth about the Coast Guard. And he ended up getting out. He retired. He stayed in long enough to retire, but still, it pretty much ate him up, because he felt that because of all those everything he deserved to get to go to OCS. And it didn't happen for what God just didn't have it in his plans for him. Yeah. His life's a whole lot better now because of what he got into after he got out of the Coast Guard. So it actually worked out great for him. But in the time, he didn't see that. He just saw it as it wasn't fair that he was getting passed over.
Yeah. And to kind of go with that, so it's really about our sense of injustice taking over, I think. And I think having a sense of injustice is okay. It's the gentleness aspect. I think that's a decent translation for it, even though it doesn't. We might get the wrong idea when we think of gentleness, possibly when we hear that word. But gentleness, if the antidote to injustice is hopefully justice, trying to make things right, you should be trying to make things right in the easiest, least painful way possible. Now, think about it from a doctor's perspective or a discipline perspective. You want to apply the least amount of pressure to the area that you're trying to discipline someone in. You don't want to, whenever someone misbehaves in school, if you're a teacher or a principal, you're not going to hopefully automatically suspend that child on the first act of that if something less will actually help that child to get the point across. You're not going, even though by the book of the student handbook for the school district, you should suspend them. If something less will help the child and they actually will learn, that hopefully will be a display of gentleness, that you won't insist upon your rights in certain areas. especially if it's something. That's just one example, possibly. But there's obviously ways that this sort of thing can possibly be abused, but we're not. That's not really the point that Paul is making. Is that you might be subject to abuse and more things more often in this case, but it's sort of the idea of not turning, or the idea of not retaliating but turning the other cheek, possibly as well. It's very connected with those sort of similar concepts of being gentle with others, and not wanting to escalate situations. And this is something that he says needs to be known to everyone. This is what Christians ought to be known for, is not their insistence upon rights, but rather that they are people who are very gentle and forgiving and moderate. And yeah. So, are there any other comments on this? I probably spent more time than I thought on this one section.
Why do you throw in there the Lord is near? Is that
Oh, well,
coming
so
or
one reason is because be gentle with people. Don't insist upon your rights, because everything's going to be made right soon. The Lord is near. I think that's what it has to do. A lot of Philippians is based upon the coming of Christ. All the way back in verse 11, he's wanting them, or verses 10 and 11 of chapter 1, he wants them to determine what really matters, so that in the day of Christ you may be pure and blameless. So a lot of his actions, so that on that day when Christ comes, they'll be ready. And so this is another way that the coming of Christ impacts us, is that we don't need to always seek out justice for ourselves. Let God handle that. Vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. It's not ours. So it's when we're God's people, we can know that He'll take care of us, and we don't have to worry about seeking out justice for ourselves all the time. Yeah, that's right. That's right. It just doesn't matter. All the suffering and the abuse, injustice that we face will be worth it. It's not worth the pain and the sorrow to give up that joy of the present that we have. Okay. And then some of the most famous verses. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. So going to these verses, the antidote to anxiety, chronic anxiety. Now, I will say in this very same letter, I believe it was chapter 2, Paul says that he is concerned for them, uses that same word to talk about his concern for the Philippians. He's concerned about their welfare. But I think this has a little bit different meaning for what anxiety he's referring to. He doesn't mean you never worry about other people and their well-being. I think but even if Paul was feeling that, he's going to go to the Lord in prayer about it. Now, what are some examples of doing this? I'll tell you, whenever Sophia was getting that thing cut off her eyelid, Rachel and I were doing a lot of praying that morning when we were doing that, and making sure, we're helpless on how Sophia is going to react to certain things, and that, and thankfully the doctor she wasn't a pediatrician, but she was very, very good. Like it was impressive how well she did as well with the doctor. We're very thankful for her. So, God answered our prayers, and I think that it did provide more peace than thinking about all the things that could go wrong. Letting those anxieties take over, you let God's peace take over. But I want to hear your examples of when you did this or when you should have done this more. There's plenty of times when I should have done this more in my life. Taking exams.
Yeah, when I was studying for my state boards for nursing, this was like my go-to verse, highlighted, underlined, index card. That was pretty much throughout my studying and everything.
Yeah, my comprehensive exams. I probably should have had this in my mind more. I definitely, the week of, I was praying a lot, but my nervous system was definitely still a little bit probably not quite there on that whenever taking those exams. So yeah, that's a good time to remember is with those high stakes moments in life, right? When you're anxious about them.
I think it can be our own worst enemy. When it comes, we're always pushing when we go to the next step. We're always setting the bars for ourselves. And a lot of times we don't, I mean, speaking from my own experience, I don't always include God in these plans. Like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to go to OCS, whatever that idea is to be a better version of myself. But when it goes south and the expectations are met, oh, it's God's fault. Yes. And so I think part of the rejoicing is in those small things, you're keeping him in the forefront. He's the reason that you fail. He could also be the reason you're not going where you think you should be going.
Yeah.
So I guess our unmet expectations, for better or worse, it's just so easy to blame instead of kind of step back and say, you know what, after that event's passed, usually like what happened with your friend, we can self-evaluate and say, well, actually look at all the positive things that came from this. And I can use my own life example. I never saw myself in North Carolina. Terrible thing happened when I was younger with all my siblings and my mom, and we're here now. And all those positive things have happened. So yeah, rejoicing is a critical concept.
Yeah, that rejoicing, and then it all comes down, I think, verses 4 through 7 comes down to trust, doesn't it? Trusting in God's plans and his power, his wisdom over our own plans, wisdom and power, and what we can do. And that's always true whenever James, a part of what he encourages in James chapter 4 is that whenever we're making plans, you don't need to be making those plans apart from God's will. You need to be like, if the Lord wills, I'm going to go to such and such a place next week. And that hopefully gives us humility and realization that we're definitely not as in control as, the modern individualist Western mind makes us to think that we are the authors of our own destiny all the time, right?
It's easy to try to tell somebody not to be anxious about something when it's happening to them.
Oh yeah.
It's hard. When I had to do the radiation, and they did a good job explaining what was going to happen, how it was this, and how to prepare and all this stuff. But the first session, leading up to the first treatment, I was anxious about it. Anxious about all the unknowns. But then after I went through it that first time, I'm like, okay. And then the thing was 32 treatments, I think 31 treatments, and I'm like, this is a lifetime. But it went faster than I anticipated. So I don't know, it's just kind of interesting. I think being anxious about something, I think it's just natural. I think it's a natural thing, but then not letting it just completely overwhelm you by giving it to God and saying, okay, this is going to be okay.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, anxious feelings are going to arise, but it's what are you going to do with those feelings, right? He says that what we need to do is prayer. And one thing I want to point out too is that he says with thanksgiving. I think that's a key part we often leave out. We can pray, but it's not we can pray, we can be desperate. I mean, there's many psalms where people are just praying to God in a very desperate situations. They're surrounded by enemies. People have betrayed them, whether it's David or someone else writing the psalm. They're facing hard times and they're praying to God about it. But I think it's important for us that even in those desperate prayers, there's thanksgiving in those because we have a lot to give thanks about. And we're going to talk more about that next week in my sermon, at least. But thanksgiving and gratefulness, gratitude. It's much more difficult to be anxious when you're thankful. Much more as Mark likes to remind us, it's almost impossible to be angry when you're thankful all the time. And thankfulness is really one of the. It's been life changing for me. I've been trying to work on this for several months in myself, and it's been probably, if I could say there's one thing, we could all change it. It was that we complain less and we give thanks more. Our lives would change radically, and there's nothing different about our situations. It's about waking up to the great realities around us in life. Yeah, gratitude and thankfulness. Yeah, that's for sure one of the things we're going to be talking about.
Do you recommend when you see someone going through a lot of worry and anxiety and they're almost sick with it, do you recommend telling them that God said in Philippians, don't be anxious?
Now, yeah, that's about as tactful as, Job's friends going to him in the middle of all that and saying, "Hey, God's going to take care of you." Or not, I don't even say that. They did sit with him, but then they're like saying, "What'd you do wrong?" But it's like, it isn't always helpful. Like there's a sort of pastoral moment where we have to go and try to help them through that in different ways. Hopefully wake them up gently to the goodness of God, even in the midst of that stuff. But one of the things that we hopefully can do is help them through it. I will say a lot of the anxiety is of their own making, and you're trying to help them out of it. I feel bad for those people, and they're hurting themselves more than they really need to be. As someone who's definitely struggled with anxiety at times.
That's a command. You know, I mean, I know that's the reason I said that. It's not helpful at all.
Yeah, it doesn't help. That's why there's other ways.
Don't think about pink elephants. Are you thinking about it?
I thought of the pink elephant on the back of one of my wife's shirts just now because of that. So, it's a pink elephant, right? Is there a pink elephant on one of your shirts? On one of your shirts. Mark, it's Mark's fault. He made me think about it. Yeah. Yes, Grady.
Well, I was just thinking about the context of this whole letter, how here he is being a sage about rejoicing and not being anxious, and he's sitting in prison,
Not knowing he's going to be.
not knowing he's going to live and die. And here he is being, all wise about rejoicing and not being anxious.
Yeah.
It's obviously it's superhuman. It's super. It's beyond. It shows that he definitely has power from the Holy Spirit.
Yeah. I think some of our anxieties, I mean, as I said, it's whenever you wake up from those anxious thoughts, you feel very silly that you worried about them. Whenever that test was over and you ended up doing well, you had prepared all that you could, and God helped you through the process. It's like, after I did all my comprehensive exams, I'm like, I worried way more than I should have. So I think that sort of ridiculous, it does make you feel sort of ridiculous and reflecting on that. I hope that you'll take some time to reflect on times when you were anxious and you realize, man, that anxiety didn't contribute anything to the situation, and it really decreased my amount of thankfulness in life. I don't know. That's my experience.
I was just thinking.
Well, you feel like a victim.
Somebody said something. My paternal grandmother, she used to say, when you're done wallowing in self-pity, my front door's open. Because it's hard to talk to somebody that want to be in that state of mind. Because everything's going against them. Yeah, so it sounds like something Mark.
No, I mean, I get that. Yeah. I get that. And sometimes I want to say that to people too, but then I realize those times where I've struggled with that in my life, and I try to have a little bit. I remember that that struggle I used to have, where I'd maybe have more self pity and more anxiety, and I try to be with them and help them out of it gently. I'm not very good at it. I'm not very good at it. I wish I was, but I do know one thing. I don't tell them you're not supposed to be anxious. That's I don't tell, at least like that. It's a command.
My biggest anxiety is being put under. And every time I wake up from it, I feel really stupid about being so anxious about it. I told Jeff a long time ago, the last time I had to be put under, he just told me he's praying.
Okay. Yeah.
That's the best sleep too.
The first time the anesthesiologist had to put me under quicker because he knew I was getting up off the gurney.
Oh boy.
Does it change things if you're going through something and you're thinking about if you have the mindset that others are watching, how you're going to handle it? Does that change? Does that change at all? How you go through it?
Sometimes.
I mean, because like Paul, how he was handling being in prison by encouraging others and putting the focus on them versus himself. And he could have wrote, oh, it's terrible, and I'm starving. There's a lot of things he could have written, but he took the opportunity to encourage. And they were seeing what he was going through, and they're seeing how he's handling it. I mean, it's just kind of changing it.
Yeah. I mean, you're realizing you're being brave for more than just yourself too. I mean, you're doing these things as an example to help people. And it's interesting. Both, I mean, in various stories, it's funny how, like in Socrates in his final moments, or even Jesus in his final moments, both of them, they had all their disciples were in disarray and weeping, and both figures who are very uh, pivotal figures in history both kept themselves together. I mean, not that Christ wasn't anxious at all, wasn't pleading with God and praying that the cup be passed from him, but Jesus knew what he was going to have to suffer, and he comforted his disciples instead of them comforting him. Socrates did the same thing. It's interesting, but I think that as leaders, people in leadership, obviously they can acknowledge this hurts and it stinks to go through, but hopefully sometimes that realizing you're in that position, it can encourage you to be like, man, I want to teach other people that they need to trust God, and that helps you to remember that you need to do it. I think doesn't that happen as parents? You feel like you try to be strong for your kids, show them courage, and display those things that you want them to display. Yeah, I think that it does change.
Well, of things around the world that Brandon had off and we were gonna go play golf, and by we, I was gonna rent a cart, he was gonna golf. And the night before, Kaylee was playing, I think it was one of those toys that's in the Easter hunt, those little things with platforms set off flying in the air, and rolling it in your hand. Well, she rolled it the wrong direction, and it went straight to her eye, and she scratched her cornea. So I pretty much knew, I'm going to school tomorrow, we're going to get her here. And, I remember her asking me, like, Mommy, are you upset? Because, it's a girl they call her Brandon. Took to the school, have fun. And I was like, well, and I say this phrase a lot, but I was like, I mean, it is what it is. Like, I'm not going to be upset because what am I going to gain from that? I say, we just make the most of today. And it is what it is. Like, I'm fine. But I knew if was I disappointed? Of course I was disappointed. It's going to be a fun afternoon. And I was like, if I had expressed in any way that I was disappointed, she would have felt horrible. She's very sensitive. She would have felt so bad. And there would have been no shaking up from her, no words that would have make her think differently. So anyway, just a small example that I was disappointed, but she's asking me, like, you're not gonna.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an example where that's a good example. That's a good. Thank you for sharing that. Brandon, when she asked you, I'm just kidding. No, no, I'm not okay. No kidding. Yeah, I get the disappointments that happen, but so going on to that next section, maybe we won't finish this week, but we'll probably finish next week based on the way things are going. We'll get through verse 9. It's good. I figured we'd talk a lot about these passages. We'll end with verses 8 and 9. Someone want to reread these verses? I know Steve already read them. Someone want to read verses 8 and 9 for us again?
Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. What you have learned, received, and heard, and seen in me, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you.
All right, thank you. So there's two commands in here. So one is to think and one is to practice. So he's wanting them to think on things, and he gives a list of various things to think about. And it's not like, pretty much it's just think about the positive, virtuous, good things. There's probably more words he could have used to describe the types of things that we are supposed to think about. Now, why is it that we need to do this? Why should we do this?
God is in control of everything. Everything that lives is Him.
Takes emphasis off us. Right, that's good. Higher than things higher than ourselves, more than ourselves.
It's a practical way to live with a feeling of thanksgiving. It's a practical way of focusing on the good things around you.
Mm-hmm.
It also goes back to what I've heard Mark say a bunch of times. It's impossible, and you guys have already said it, it's impossible to be grateful and have gratitude if you're always thinking, woe is me, if you're always anxious, if you're always down in the dumps. If you're focusing on things that you're grateful for and things, the good things, then those negative things aren't going to be entering into your heart.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of like light and dark can't exist in the same space.
Right.
Yeah. So if you're keeping your mind on these kind of things.
Yeah, and I mean, the force of darkness can be more powerful at sometimes than others. But one thing, there's a million things that we could attend to with our minds. I could be thinking about pink elephants right now. I could be thinking about what I'm going to be eating after this. I could be thinking about all these various different things. Be thinking about the phone on the wall. Various different things. If you have ADHD, it's a struggle. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not diagnosed with it or anything, but there's so many things our minds can attend to, and we can always be tempted to attend to those things that are hurting us. Because, I mean, there's a point to which that serves us to where, okay, this is a problem and I need to fix it. If you try to do that, it'll hopefully make your life better if thinking about that. But if you're always thinking about those things that are wrong so that you can fix them, that's not a very thankful lifestyle to live by. Because at the end of the day, there's so many things you can't fix. There's so many things that will make you feel completely helpless. And that's when you realize thinking about those things is not what I need to be doing. Out of the infinite things to attend, for my mind to attend to, these are the things that really deserve attention for us. And it'll help us think about all the blessings that we have.
Well, doesn't he say what the result of that will be?
The
end phrase, and God
Yeah.
peace will be with you. People do a lot of things to get peace. Go to ministers, they go to psychiatrists, take drugs, alcohol, all kinds of when this tells you what to do to get peace.
Yeah. And yeah, and I mean, other people can hopefully point out our negative thought patterns and help us be like, you're always thinking about the bad, you're always thinking about the bad things that are happening to you. What about all these other great things that are happening in life? Why don't you think about these things? Hopefully people can, whether it be a therapist, minister, a friend, partner, whatever it is, hopefully they can. I think that's one of the benefits of having friends is they hopefully can help you remember whenever you're thinking about all these negative things to think about all the awesome things that we could be thinking about instead. It's for me, this is one of the wonderful things about studying. It causes your mind to go to be set on certain things. Um, and some of them are studying the Bible. Sometimes your mind can be set on very unpleasant things, but uh, it's not that we're supposed to be rose tinted glasses in every way, but uh, contemplating the truth and things that are honorable and pure and pleasing and commendable is pretty. And once you start getting in the habit of it, it starts to become pretty easy because you start to realize all these other things you're really thankful for deep down. Um, I don't know. Let's talk more about examples. How can we do this? What are some ways that we can put our minds on these things, think about these things?
I'll share a story about Susan, which was three man foster kids in the room. When they lived in their house in Brownsland, they were all in school, public school. Susan would put verses on the bathroom mirror. Remember that? This one was on there. I specifically remember this verse. And she wanted them to read this while they were brushing their teeth and getting ready to go to school. And it always impressed me. I don't know how often she changed up that verse, but this one was on there. I specifically remember this one.
I've actually been thinking about that the last couple of weeks.
Have you?
I have. It is on my to-do list. It's really sad I haven't done it. It is on my to-do list to put verses on the girls' bathroom mirror because I remember my mom doing that.
Yeah.
And just how steadfast and faithful she was in everything she was going through. She could have just given up and lost faith, but instead she didn't, and she used to always put verses on the bathroom mirror.
Yeah. And so these things provide a sense of peace, secure. And for me, it's like you come from a place of when you're thankful, you're thinking about these things. I probably someone else came up with this and I just remembered it, but I call it like an abundance mindset. The world, we have everything that we need, as Second Peter verse 2 talks about. We have everything that we need for life and godliness. We have everything that we need in this life. We have an abundance of blessings. We have more than we need, really. And whenever we really become conscious of that, it's like you you don't have to feel like woe is me anymore. You don't, because you realize God's on your side. You realize that you have all these other people helping you out. And on top of that, various other blessings. But that's so one of the so you can set your mind on those things. Having it on your bathroom mirror, having it displayed readily about things that help you remember, and having it as a memory verse if you have it on your bathroom mirror and read it word for word every day, you'll memorize it pretty quickly. But memorizing it, trying to think about it habitually whenever you're in negative thought patterns. One thing that I read a book that Mark gave me. I read a section of it. It was on joy. I think he gave it to people. They made people at Grady White read it for money. But so it's on joy. And one of the things that he says in one of these very short chapters has an application of joys. Think about all these wonderful things. Notice every day whenever your thought patterns are going in this negative way. Be very attentive to your thoughts for a period of time. Now, it can be really annoying to be attentive to your thoughts, thinking about your thinking. it's not fun, and you're like super self-conscious. You feel clumsy at times, but whenever you notice it, that's whenever you can start to change it. You're like, man, I'm starting to be negative. I've It's helped, but I will say, as someone who's practiced that the past several months, um, whenever things have not gone the way I wanted them to, it's been very helpful to be sort of conscious of that. To then turn, it's like, oh, okay, I'm thinking about all these negative things. What are some good things I can think about that make all that stuff not important in comparison? That's really hopefully the thing that you can think about to do. And I'm not trying to say there are certain things in life that'd be much more hard to do than others if you're huge tragedies. Um, but again, it's something that hopefully with practice, especially in the smaller things, it'll get easier to do. Yes, Grady.
I was going to point out, secondly, when we demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ.
Yeah.
So that's what you were saying. Be very cognizant of your rabbit holes that you're going down and take these thoughts captive and instead think on these things, whatever the Lord is.
That's right. Yeah, because again, all the things you're anxious about, pray about them to God, give them to God. Then that frees your mind up. That you put in God and responsible for all those things you're anxious about. Then you free your mind up to think about these things. Is really what He's wanting us to do. Yeah.
Kind of leads into the next question you want to do about the spiritual disciplines. This stuff is what we should be practicing. It's the things that we should be dwelling on, the things we should be thinking on. Because life is going to throw us a curveball. And we are going to we have to be ready for that, how to respond. I think of Caleb and your response is not being disappointed. So Caleb, you didn't have time to think about that. You reacted. And you reacted in a better way. And I think that's what all this is it becomes a part of you where when life does throw you a curveball or something, you're able to, you're more in the mind of Christ than you are in your own mind. That's how to respond to it at that moment.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, this is a form of meditation, a Christian form of meditation, of ruminating on noble, honorable, virtuous things. And so, yeah, that is one of the disciplines. It's usually meditation's more linked to meditating on Scripture, which is one way to practice this. But there's other types of ways that we can meditate in forms of gratitude. But yes.
I just wanted the part of this that I think is powerful that we sometimes look past, and it's been hinted on already in here, is what it says in verse 9. It says the thing, after he says all of that in verse 8, then he says the things which you learned and received and heard and saw in me, those do, and the God of peace will be with you. To me, that's pretty powerful on being the type of example in Christ that we're supposed to be. I go back to how powerful it was for your mom putting those verses on the mirror. It's so powerful that still as an adult you remember it, and you remember how and that it shaped who you are. And so by her example, you grew to become the woman that you are now. There's so many stories out there of being that example. You with your own daughter, when she cut her eye. I mean, you could have flipped out, but you didn't. You were being brave for her and an example for her. And sometimes we forget how many people are watching us. And as Christians, we need to be that example of the things that he mentioned in verse 8.
Yeah, that's right.
And when I read this, and maybe I'm interpreting it wrong, the way I read it is, by doing all these things, and God think that necessarily means that you're just going to experience peace and nothing's ever going to come your way. One thing that I just got in the habit of doing before work every morning, praying, I specifically pray for just God's peace over my day because I never know what I'm going to run into. I don't know who I'm going to talk with that day. And it doesn't mean that I'm just going to have this super smooth day, but whatever comes at me, it's just more of a calm outlook on it. And flustered, like I've just noticed like a pattern of my day is more the stress level is just like plummeted.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that my work has changed. It's just that being able to respond in more just a calm and it is what it is. And just, deal with the situation and, so.
Yeah, you definitely live a much more peaceful, less angry and anxious life whenever you live this way. And that's why, I mean, one of the thing that the gospel calls us to be is just fully human in the best sense of the term. It's not that there won't be issues that arise, but it teaches us the way that to actually act and be in the world, even in a world that's fallen. That's a world that's not optimal because of the sin that's entered it. Okay, so that's where we're going to end today. We'll get through the rest of it. We may even get a little bit into this spiritual disciplines next week as well, an introduction to them. Okay, the prayer list, Grady.
Okay, so, here's the prayer request. Diane asked